prison. Then there's Jonathan Edwards. 300 ministers, 100 college professors, 100 lawyers, 60 doctors, 86 senators, 1 vice president of the United States, and 60 congressmen. What you do matters. I'm a bit of a math nut, so I apologize. But I had 4 kids when I ran this chart. I have 5 now. We adopted a boy 3 years ago. But if I update it, it just makes the numbers even larger. So with my 4 kids, if they each have 4 kids in one generation, that's 16, right? If they have 4 kids, then that's 64. If they have 4 kids, that's 256. Go to the 8th generation, 262,000. That's bigger. That's like the upstate, right? I mean, that's big. So if you think about impact, start at home and work out. John 15:4, abide in me and I in you, as a branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in me, in the vine. Neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. Abiding. See, Christians not use that frequently in the New Testament. Sometimes it's used as an adjective. What the disciples would say is in Christ. Are you in Christ? Do you abide in Him? So my Christian life before I was in my office was praying at dinner, praying until I fell asleep, and going to church on Sunday. That was the extent. I may read the Bible some, but most of the time I was in a hurry and trying to get through it. That was the extent of my Christian life. That's not abiding. In Christ is you are in Christ. Everything that you do is in Christ. You view yourself as an ambassador. You represent Christ in your work, in your family, everywhere you go. So if we leave here and we are in Christ, we will change this state by being in Christ. That's how we impact our community, our family, our government, and our culture. What's a visionary? A visionary is one who forms in practical schemes, one who is confident of success in a project where others perceive as idle or fanciful. That's the definition of a visionary. That's who I was when I'm in my office. I was a visionary. I'd wondered if I'd broken things beyond repair. And in God's mercy, He says, I am. I am He that restores. I am He that overcomes. I am He that never forsakes you. I am He. I am. So no matter what you're facing today, you serve I am. The beginning of anxiety is the end of faith. And the beginning of faith is the end of anxiety. Let's define a few things. Focus, the main purpose or interest, point at which an image is formed by a mirror, point at which there's clear perception or understanding is reached. Clarity, discernible without ambiguity, understood and remembered. And change, to become different, not like before. So these are the things we'll talk about: getting our focus, getting clarity, and making change. You'll see a lot of quotes. I love quotes. I like military quotes, I like all kinds of quotes. This is another one I like. Success is not final, and failure is not fatal. It is a courage to continue that counts. I still make mistakes. I still get angry at my kids. I'm not the perfect husband. I still struggle with working too much from time to time. I do. But it's a process, and I'll show you a wheel that I've developed that helps me think about things. There are 2 fears that plague people. One is known and one is unknown. One is a fear of failure, but another, which I've witnessed, is a fear of success. Ever known the person is like near the finish line and they just walk it, they're running and they just walk the last little bit? They don't want to win. We serve I am. Another quote. And I picked both Democrats and Republicans for quotes, so you know. On May 25th, 1961, President Kennedy addressed Congress that America would walk on the moon by the end of the decade. Did that change anything? Yeah, it started a space race. So when we set our goals, we're going to get to in just a second, we want to have a timeline, some point for us to focus on. And what happens if you miss it? What happens if you miss the timeline? What do? Set a new timeline, right? But you can't hit what you don't aim for. So I have a little worksheet in front of us here. And you can keep this to yourself, and you can put your arm over it, and let me see you fill it out. We can answer these questions. Do you complete task on time, 1 through 10? 1 is like, not really. 10 is like, all the time. Do you quickly return to a task when you're interrupted? Do you have goals in writing? 1's like, 10's yes. Do you set clear steps to reach your goals? Do you have your goals in timelines? And do you evaluate your progress and changes? This you can take home. I'm going a little fast because I've got a few more things I want to get to. But these are things to rate. The low score is a 6, and the high score is a 60. Also, we'll talk about integrity if you get a 60 as well. But the favorite part of this is the part that always beats me up and I want to look at is the star below this. And this is really the point I spend time on is the 5 F's of life: faith, family, friends, finance, and fitness. So we'll come back to that. But let's go ahead and score ourselves. Faith. How's our faith? How's our walk with the Lord? 1 is there's not 1. 10 is it couldn't be better. So when I was in my office, I was rather low on this scale. Lower than I thought I was. How about family? 10 is fantastic. 1 is you're in your office. Okay. Friends. Do you have friends who are not just like social friends, but people who talk to you and tell you the truth and point you back toward God? Or the people who or commiserate and agree with whatever position you have? You know, there's good friends and there's friends who just are kind of, I don't know what she's talking about either. You know what I'm talking about? So what kind of friends do you have? Our finances, how are your finances? 1 through 10. Then how's your health? And what you'll find in your life is that whatever area is the lowest score will consume the most time. So if your family's the lowest score, you can avoid that for a while. But at some point, it'll consume your time. If your health is the lowest score, you can avoid that for a while, but at some point, you'll consume your time. I can't tell you, we do financial planning and money management. How many people I talk to who work very hard, long hours to accumulate a lot of wealth and will spend anything to extend their life and take care of their health. Whatever you avoid will be what consumes your time. So then, and you circle these numbers, whatever they happen to be, draw a circle and connect the dots. So if you're a 5 and 1 and a 6 and another, then a 3, then a 9, just connect around and you'll see an interesting shape. And that's a wheel. So that's how smooth your ride through life is going to be. So if I gave a talk one time and the guy goes, "Man, I got a smooth wheel." I go, "What's your score?" "They're all 2s. That's not the goal. You'd rather have like a lumpy and an 8, at least an 8 in one area, right? So, but that's what it is. So and faith is going to, everything else is going to come out of your faith. It's externalized everything else. When I got into business, I was a financial planner. Now I try to help be a Christ-focused plan. So how do you plan your life to focus on Christ? Be in Christ. Your business, your family, your finances, everything. And I'm going to skip through some of these to get through what we're talking about. Successful thinking and unsuccessful thinking. These are things to think about as we're planning. Unsuccessful thinking is dream of goals but don't write them down, or think that you're too busy to write down goals. Successful thinking is establish written goals and review them regularly. Now, goals can be in all the areas: your faith, family, fitness, finance, friends. I'd like to read my Bible daily. That's a great goal. I'd like to pray once a day. Great goal. But fitness, maybe I'll walk for 20 minutes. Just in each area. Successful thinking. I create plans to accomplish goals with specific timelines. Unsuccessful thinking. Think of all the reasons why you can't reach them. Successful thinking. Focus on the highest priority first. Unsuccessful thinking. Focus on the demands of life. The phone ringing, the text message, the Facebook update. Successful thinking. See the benefit of the mistakes you've made and learn from them. Unsuccessful thinking. Spending time to see who you can assess blame to. It was their fault this happened. Successful thinking. Make new plans to rebuild from failures. Unsuccessful thinking. Dreaming of a world with no failures. Some of the greatest things in life happen after failures. So don't be afraid to fail. Just don't stop. Encourage you to think about a vision statement. Some of us have it for our business, but do we have it for our personal life? One that includes our core values, our faith, giving, acts of service, and our work. And how do we make change? All I've ever seen, there's only 4 ways. We can start doing something we weren't doing. We can stop doing something we are currently doing. We can do more of something that we're currently doing, or we can do less of something we're currently doing. So it's very simple. I'll walk you through a couple more tools, and I'll be sensitive to our time today. Form a family mission statement. Habakkuk 2:2, write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. Habakkuk 2:2. This is one of my favorite quotes by Teddy Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts, nor the man who points out the strong man's stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done things better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there's no effort without error or shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement. And at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly. So this place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Engage. I'm going to go forward a few slides. One of the things important to me, and ended up getting me into the film business, I got into it really by accident, and it's kind of funny. And this is just God's mercy. And I have a saying that God often He calls, He doesn't necessarily call the equipped, He equips those He calls. And if you knew a stuttering guy from Fayette County, Georgia, went to public high school, grew up in a middle class home, you know, I didn't have anything was ever going to happen in the film business. But I love my son, and I want to spend time with him. And there was a guy who had a business. It was a filmmaking business, and he was going to make a documentary in the Amazon called Into the Amazon on pantheism versus creationism. And it was going to debunk evolution. And was going to take a creation scientist with us and a medical doctor to provide missions to the people in the Amazon. And when we're there, and they didn't have the budget to finish it, so they called me, would you underwrite it? And I'm like, I'll underwrite it, sure. And when I got there, I also learned about budgeting filmmakers. I was not expecting helicopter scenes, and there were. so it got a little more expensive. But when we got there, I learned a lot of things. I learned that people can be happy with nothing. We got off on these little boats and went back to evangelize communities about a mile off the Amazon River, living in grass huts, and bringing the Bible and trying to speak to them through an interpreter about Christ, and they walk out with the Bible in their language and said, somebody got here first. Think about that. And they were joyful. So we're there, this is my son and I in Machu Picchu, and then we're on a boat. And the time that came out of the time with him was wonderful. When I got back, I ended up being introduced to Stephen and Alex Kendrick, who've made the movies Fireproof, Facing the Giants, recent War Room. And then they introduced me to Bill Reeves, my business partner, and I ended up investing in that business. And he was the guy who did the marketing for all those films. And there was God can use you and your skill set wherever you are. Mine's in one area, yours is in another area. But mine's in structure and running hedge funds. So I was like, well, how do you raise money for faith-based film? He said, well, we borrow $5,000 from the dentist and $10,000 from the doctor, and the church will give us $20, and our grandmother gives us $25, and all this. Well, how do you provide disclosures to them? Well, what's that? How do you determine suitability? Well, they want to invest, they're suitable. Okay, where do they live? All over the country. And I'm like, oh, there's so many things wrong. So what if you could go to one source and have all the funding you need to make a movie? What if that fund had a third-party accounting firm, third-party tax, third-party audit, and you produce audited financial statements? And you wouldn't have to have 50 investors who everyone has a script and a relative who's a rising actor to deal with. That'd be great, Eric, that'd be great. So we started the very first, to my knowledge, faith-based hedge fund 3 years ago. And I'll run through some of our films real quick. And our goal is to spread the gospel through film. And most of us say, well, film, how powerful is that? If I were to ask you to recall the last 3 sermons you've heard, most people couldn't do it. But if I could say when you heard Darth Vader say to Luke, I'm your father, you remember that, right? Film's powerful. So these are the movies that we've done through marketed or financed. And God in His abundant mercy has done over $500 million in sales in the last 4 years through these films. God's Not Dead 1, God's Not Dead 2, The Game Stands Tall, Mom's Night Out, 90 Minutes in Heaven, War Room, Courageous, Fireproof, Facing the Giants. And we have some more we're doing.